Join live Africans United. Know Thyself, Black Power Radio, right here on Oak 93.5. Each and every Sunday from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. where we discuss solutions to issues affecting black communities locally, nationally, and globally. With hosts Brother Essence Divine and Brother Ausar Amen. With special guests each week. You can follow Africans United. Know Thyself, Black Power Radio on Facebook.com/Oak 93.5. Or you can engage in conversation by calling live 919-899-9305. Once again, each and every Sunday from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. right here on Oak 93.5.
Peace to the elders, the ancestral giants. Peace to the kings, queens, and royal families all over. And peace to you, brothers and sisters. You tune into Oak 93.5 FM, Africans United, Know Thyself, Black Power Radio. Where ancient wisdom meets modern truth, we speak directly to the souls of people. This is more than conversation, this is elevation. The mission is empowerment, cultural awakening, and grassroots truth-telling. I'm here with two of my favorite people. The CEO and founder of KCSSU, Brother Ausar, man.
Anakasar, a BB for Hodier, African liberation, black liberation, African power, black power, for every black man, woman, and child on the planet. We are the original people. I am the original man. I am a son of Africa. Peace to the African family.
And the beautifully ingenuous, the brilliant and lovely, my sister, Dr. Kimberly, Muktarian.
Well, thank you, Brother Essence. Thank you, audience, for being with us, and we are excited today about today's topic because it reaches all humanity, and it reminds us of who we are in the earth. Dr. Kimberly.
Yes. And just a reminder to let everybody know that we've now moved to 9 a.m. on Sunday still. And so last week we had a discussion on countering and combating modern day lynching. And the very next day, 2 of our brothers were hanged. Mm. And it's not a debate whether it was done to them or if they did it to themselves. But what we do know is that we need to reconnect with ourselves. So we titled this show today, Know Thyself, the Main Purpose of Life, African Culture and Spirituality. We would discuss virtues of initiation, Shetawat Netta, Simatawi, the 9 paths, the 9 parts of spirit, consciousness, and more. I want to start at Ma'at. Ma'at's philosophy extends beyond religion into daily life, governing personal behavior, social justice, even state governance. The 42 laws of Ma'at, which is also known as the Declarations of Innocence, were principles that guided moral conduct, predating and likely influencing codes such as the 10 Commandments. The core principles are truth, justice, righteousness, order, balance, harmony, and reciprocity. And Brother Ausar, which is absolutely a superb attribute, brother. We can get into that sooner or later. Can you expound on the goddess of Ma'at?
Yes. Maya is my father's ground. Maya is the daughter of the creator Ra and set order throughout the universe, right? So Maya is dealing with, truth, justice, righteousness, order, balance, harmony, reciprocity, right? Unity. All of these things are important. Maya is the philosophy of Maya is the philosophy of enlightenment. And this is very true. And we'll see, as we continue this discussion, how Maya is at the core of all of our ethical values, principles, all of our teachings, from our great ancestors. And Maya is our foundation. So when we live a life of Maya, we're living a life of truth, right? And it's important to understand, that we were instructed to think Maya, speak Maya, and do Maya.
Mm-hmm. So what does it mean to if you living in Maya? How does it translate in the everyday choices of life today's?
Well, it gives us a solid foundation when we understand, that unfortunately, we live in a world of chaos. And so what Mayat does is bring order and balance to one's life, right? So, in the oldest book in the world, the book of Ptah Hotel,
Okay.
it's stated that no one is born wise. We have to be instructed, right? And, the main purpose of life, and we'll get to this, is the great awakening, which is to know thyself, right? So to know thyself is the greatest thing that we can accomplish. And to know thyself is to know thy spirit, right? And to understand the connection that we have, to one another, to the universe, and to the Creator.
Right. And the ancient sage of Ptah Hotep, he declared, do not be arrogant because your knowledge, do not be arrogant because of your knowledge, but take counsel with the ignorant as well as the wise.
Yes, because as the quote goes on to say that wisdom can be found at the grindstone by the maze. You never know who you come across, right? And in the philosophy of Maya, we have foundational pillars, right? We have basically perfectibility, right? Striving for that infinite perfection, which is the spirit. And then we have teachability, right? And that is that, everyone can teach something and everyone can be taught. So with that right there, it shows that we can learn from one another, right? So that's why, the saying is converse with the ignorant as well as the wise, right? Because you can get knowledge from both. And the third one of our foundational pillars of Maya is free will. We have the will to do Maya, truth, justice, and righteousness, or isfit, anger, hatred, jealousy, right? The lower aspects of the mind of the spirit, right? And then we have divine image, right, as our fourth foundational pillar. And divine image is our spirit, understanding that we are spirit. When we look in the mirror, we are seeing our divine image manifested in the flesh. And the fifth one, which is very important, is essentiality of moral social practice, which states that the only good that is done is the good that is done for those who need it the most, the least of us, right? So these foundational principles, right, help to shape our consciousness where we understand our responsibility here on the planet Earth, not only to ourselves and our family, but to one another and to nature and creation itself.
And where you're going, the spirit, the nature, speaking on it, that gets into some of the Shatuat Netta itself principles. Shatuat Netta teaches us on what to do in order to have peace and balance in life.
Right.
Yeah. So and I'm let me get my thoughts together. Like Shatuat, I think that's like hidden mystery secrets.
Correct.
And Netta is the nature or divinity,
Right.
the spirit.
Cosmic forces, the creator, creation. Yes, correct. Shatuat Netta.
All right. So what does it mean that Shatuat Netta is divine mysteries?
Well, Shatuat Netta is divine instructions, right, from our ancestors as far as what we are to do while we are here on the planet Earth, right? So these 14 principles, ethical principles and values, right, are all based off of Maya, which is important to understand, right? And the first one, and the knowledge of self. And the first Shatuat Netta is Shatuat Netta enjoins that the main purpose of life is the great awakening, to know thyself, spiritual enlightenment, right? So what's important to understand, enjoins mean it instructs us, right? So this is very important because we understand that, we all have a purpose of life, but the main purpose is to know who we are, right? Not only as an individual, but as a people, and also our role to humanity, right? Being that we are the original people on this planet, which is very important to understand that we are direct descendants from the Creator itself, right? And all other people come from the black woman and the black man. So Shetawat Netta enjoins that the main purpose of life is the great awakening, to know thyself, right? The second one is equally important, right? Which is Shetawat Netta enjoins Shetty, spiritual investigation as the highest endeavor in life. So when we understand that Shetty means spiritual investigation, right? That means it's the highest endeavor in life. That means that, the greatest thing that we can do is to investigate our spiritual essence, our spiritual nature, understanding the connection that we had to one another, the connection we had to nature, the connection we had to the universe, the connection that we have to the Creator, and that we are creators within ourselves, co-creators, and we have the ability to create just as the Creator created us through His mind. We create through our mind.
Okay. And so how did the ancestors use this science?
Well, first, what I'm gonna do is we're gonna go back, right?
Yes.
And we're gonna go to, which is very important, the 10 virtues of an initiate,
Right.
And the way we teach our children at KCSSU, right? The 10 principles of a student, right? We kind of simplify it for them, right? So when we understand these virtues and the importance that it play in our development, in gaining the knowledge of self, the first thing that we teach, right, our children, just as our ancestors taught, was to control your thoughts, right? So that in itself lets us know that we're dealing with the mind, right? So controlling your thought goes more than just, controlling what comes in your mind, but controlling your thoughts is what is your focus on, right? So we understand that the focus is like what we said in Shetawat Netta, the first principle. Shetawat Netta enjoins the main purpose of life is the great awakening, to know thyself, right? And the second one was Shetawat Netta enjoins Shetty, spiritual investigation as the highest endeavor in life. So your mind has to really be sharp in order to understand, nature, to understand our essence, and it takes a focus. And that's why that's the first one, to control your thoughts, because you don't want to have thoughts where your mind is just going from one place to another.
Right.
The second principle is control your actions.
Okay.
Because if you can control your thoughts, you can control your actions. The third one is steadfastness in purpose, which is very important because we've already discussed 2 times the main purpose of life, which is the great awakening, to know thyself, right? The fourth one, right, is have faith in your teacher's ability to lead you on the path of truth, which is very important because you have to have an authentic instructor, teacher, right? Someone who's genuine and someone who's trustworthy. I always like to say I have one of the best teachers on the planet, Grandmaster Jegna, Dr. Elijah Mickle, Baba Akmos, right? And he has proven time and time again, not only with me, but throughout his life, how genuine he is and how trustworthy he is with his knowledge and his wisdom, right? And these things are important because you don't run across Jegnas of that caliber every day. So it's always good to find someone who is a genuine preceptor, instructor, teacher. The fifth one is have faith in your ability to accept the truth, right?
Okay.
Because a lot of times, we are taught or miseducated at an early age until we start coming into real knowledge. And that's why Maya is so important, because we have to be willing to accept the truth, right? And we have to also understand what justice truly is and what righteousness truly is. So number 5 is have the ability to accept the truth. Number 6, very important, have the ability to act with wisdom,
Okay.
right? And you can tell a wise person by their good actions, right? Number 7, freedom from resentment under the act of persecution, right? And that's a hard one to deal with because we're going to face persecution through our lives. But we understand when we hold resentment, it don't do nothing but hurt us, right? So we deal with whatever the issue is, the problem, but we don't let it simmer within us, right? And that's a challenge. And that's why, what we do is spiritual development, psychospirituality. working on the mind and the spirit at the same time. Number 8 is similar to number 7. Freedom from resentment under the act of being wrong. And we've all been wrong. Our brothers and sisters, our ancestors, and we're still being wrong today. But we can't have resentment because then we won't be able to think clearly, right? So that goes to number 1, control your thoughts. Number 9, have the ability to distinguish right from wrong, right? And so basically, you know, Brother Essence, you know, we work with the children and we ask them simple, basic questions. And at an early age, they can distinguish right from wrong. And so can we as adults. And number 10, have the ability to distinguish the real from the unreal, which is also equally important. Because a lot of times something will be right in our face and we'll ignore it and act like it don't exist. We'll deny it. You know, like oppression, racism, things of that nature, right? So these principles set a foundation, and this is what we start out with the children, right? To control your thoughts. And ways that we control your thoughts, we give them tools like meditation, right? And as we get further into the discussion about Simatawi, it's going to show us how we practice Shadi, which is spiritual investigation, right? And so when we go back to Shetawat Netta, right, I went through the first 2. The third one is Shetawat Netta and joins. It is the responsibility of every human being to promote order and truth, which is very important. Order and truth is Maya. So now what I would like to do is ask questions. I would like to ask a question to Dr. Kim, and that is, Dr. Kim, why is it the responsibility of every human being to promote order and truth?
Wow, that's a fully loaded question, Brother Kevin. I'm honored to attempt to answer that. And, you know, in society, when we look at, you know, often look at how far they say we've come, technology. We've walked on the moon, and we have 5G technology now where we can talk to anybody around the world. But still, we can't get these basic principles of humanity together. Right. Mm-hmm. That is a very strong indictment as to where we really think we are as humanity. Because just treating other people the way we want to be treated, or having these foundational truths, you would think that we would have arrived there already. We would think we would be more tolerant of other people and their, you know, whoever they are or whatever they're trying to become. As long as it's not, you know, you would think that these things would already be put in place or settled. But what we have seen, even in the last week, is that we are still experiencing things that our ancestors experienced 150 years ago. We still have enemies who speak that we're one nation under God, but they show tremendous divisions. Right. So it is very important to answer your question as to why we need to have these foundational truths in humanity, in society, in civilization. Because without those primary layers of truth, justice, and civility, as a species, we are doomed to be extinct. That's the truth of the matter, because how far do we go before we actually begin to eliminate each other?
Indeed. Right. And I would like to also add that, you know, for the listening audience, right, that, you know, these teachings and these values and ethical principles, you know, that we're discussing today go back thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And I think this is important because, you know, we were able to sustain civilization off of these values and principles for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And a lot of times, you know, we don't even want to look at what our ancestors contributed, you know, to world humanity, to world civilization, right, to all the sciences.
That's right.
Right. And so when we really take a look at these values and principles, we'll see that if we were to put it into practice, you know, how much better this world would be, right? And so that, thank you for the answer too, Dr. Kim. Now, the fourth Shetawat Netta, principle is Shetawat Netta enjoins the performance of selfless service to family, community, and humanity, right? Start with family, then community, and humanity, right? So that's a great responsibility to give freely of yourself. Just as the Creator gives freely to us, the elements of the universe, right? The sun, the sunshine, right? Tefnut, the water, the moisture, right? Food, right? Nature, everything that we need, the Creator gives to us freely in abundance.
That's right.
Right? So we give back through selfless service to family, community, and humanity. The fifth one, Shetawat Netta enjoins the protection of nature. Right? Brother Essence, if you would please help me out, brother, why is this principle so important?
The connection with nature.
Protection of nature.
Protection of nature. Well, because nature and human and beings, all things are bound on one cord, by one cord. So to protect, we need to protect the nature is protecting ourselves.
Yes.
One, because like I just said, because we bound by one cord. So fully loaded question, brother. Look, but no. Some, a lot of this stuff I've seen and I studied in it, but I'm also still learning in this stuff. So it's a pleasure for me to be here and I'm honored to be amongst this conversation. But to protect nature, we have to. That's a very important because like I said, we all bound by one cord, and it's about protecting ourselves. That's and right. From nature we get the medicines we need. Right. From nature we get the oxygen.
That's true.
Yes.
all those things. Sunlight is probably the most important energy of the universe, and that's part of nature.
Right. That's right.
The moon, the stars. But I want you to continue finishing up the Nettas, but I want to know how does the Shetawat Netta reconnect us to our African origin, and how does it contrast with Western philosophy or modern day beliefs?
That's good.
Yes,
that's
indeed.
good.
Great question. It connects us, which is a beautiful thing to be connected, to the motherland, Africa. Like Kwame Nkrumah said, I am Africa not because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me. And I think that's something that,
That's powerful.
Yeah,
yes, indeed.
like
that once we connect back to our motherland, to the mother, and understand the greatness of our ancestors, it does wonders for our confidence. It does wonders for our knowledge, our consciousness, which is very important, right? Because, when we raise our consciousness to the level where, our mind becomes lucid and we can see things clearly, it makes it easier, to protect ourselves and to protect our loved ones and to protect nature, right? So the connection that Shetawat Netta gives us is a foundation of, what we are to do while we are here on this planet Earth, right? And what I do is I go to number 6, which is very important, right? Shetawat Netta, right, enjoins the protection of the weak and oppressed, right? So the contrast that you're asking about as far as Western philosophy and Western psychology as opposed to African philosophy and African psychology. In African philosophy and psychology, we all understand that we are spirit, right? And that's why, the first one in Shetawat Netta enjoins the main purpose of life is the great awakening, to know thyself, spiritual enlightenment, right? To know thyself is to know thy spirit, right? To know that we are spirit, manifested, and as we move on and get to the 9 parts of the spirit, we'll see how even the physical is spirit. So it's a big contrast. In Western philosophy, in Western psychology, right? And it's like one of our greats, Dr. Amos Wilson said, one of our great psychologists, is that you can tell Western philosophy and psychology through their history, right? And their history isn't based off of Maya, truth, justice, and righteousness. Their history is based off of murder, thievery, enslavement, genocide, right? So all of these go against Maya, which is our philosophy, right? And And that's why I think it's important for us as African people, black people, right, to really look into the teachings of our ancestors, follow the ways of our ancestors, and follow the ways of those who have listened to our ancestors' instructions, right? Like I had mentioned earlier, Baba Akmos, right, who travels to the motherland, to get direct knowledge, right? And it's good to get knowledge, from a lot of our greats, like Sheikh Anta Diop, Dr. John Henry Clark, Dr. Ben Yochanan, and all our other greats who, spent many of years studying and researching so that we can gain the knowledge necessary and raise our consciousness, right, to understand what we have to do as a people, right, to go back to where we belong on the planet Earth. And that is at the head of the table as kings and queens, right? We are the original people on the planet, right? Number 7, right, Shetawat Netta enjoins the caring for the hungry, right? Number 8, Shetawat Netta enjoins the caring for the homeless, right? Number 9, Shetawat Netta enjoins equality between all people. Number 10, Shetawat Netta enjoins equality between men and women. So here, in these values and principles, right, without even saying, we see what? Equity.
Yes.
And fairness.
Absolutely.
And justice, right, which is based off of Maya.
Yes.
Right? So number 11, Shetawat Netta enjoins the justice for all. Right? There go to justice. That's number 12, Shetawat Netta enjoins the sharing of the resources. Right? Which is very important. When you look at Africa and you look at, and I love to take it back to Africa because that's where we from.
That's right.
And Africa is humongous. It's big.
Yes.
Right? And the resources in Africa is showing how we shared our resources. These were values, right? Wherein, and we still got that in us today, where we share with one another as a people, which is a beautiful thing. Number 13, which I love, right? Shetawat Netta enjoins the proper raising and education of the children.
Yes.
Right? The proper, not only education, but raising them.
Yes.
Raising them with respect.
That's right.
If you see an elder standing and you get up and let them sit down. These are in the instructions from Ptahhotep. Thousands and thousands of years ago. And naturally, we know that. If we're on the bus, we see a elderly woman coming, we're going to get up and give her a seat.
Yeah.
Because it's within our nature to be righteous, right? So when we see ourselves acting outside of our nature, it's because we've been miseducated and placed in environments where we have to basically try to figure our way out. And that goes back to, one of the points I made earlier about the book of Ptahhotep. No one is born wise, right? The knowledge you have is going to be based off of the information that you receive.
Yes.
Right? And that's why this information, is so important. And number 14 on Shetawat number, was the 14th principle is Shetawat Netta enjoins the movement towards balance and peace. And balance is Maya. And we, just like Maya is so important because when we're making the transition from one realm to another, the heart is weighed against the feather of Ma'at. And the feather of Ma'at represents truth, right? So in the halls of Ma'at, right, the heart has to balance out with the feather in order to move to the next realm. That's why number 14, Shetawat Netta enjoins the movement towards balance and peace, right? And peace is what? Ma'at as well. So these 14 principles are principles that we have to basically take into practice each and every day, along with the 10 virtues of an initiate. And we'll see that all of these go work hand in hand in hand, right? To help us to be able to understand the mind, the spirit, the body, right? And how before we do anything, we have to be in control of our thoughts. And when we understand, right, that was the first thing that the oppressors and exploiters still try to do to us is damage our minds.
It's true.
Right. And that's why the mind is so important.
Right.
And that's why we have to fight for our children, who
That's right.
basically are being, misdiagnosed and given these psychotropic drugs that's going to affect the mind
Right.
in a negative way.
Right.
Can I ask you a question,
Yes.
Brother Ausar? How important is it for society to understand these principles as original? Because, in the Western civilization, we hear the Constitution
Right.
thrown at us that is the standard, so to speak, to society. But the Constitution has failed us in its infancy from the original document. It never included all humanity.
Right.
Whereas when I hear you talk about the principles of Mayak and the ancestral way of dealing with humanity, it's inclusive.
Right. Indeed.
It has justice embedded in it.
Yeah.
So the flaws are not we don't see the flaws because it is a balanced approach to creation. It even includes all creation, not just humans. It's how do you treat
Right.
plants, animals, and
Right.
now, and we know in Western civilization, those who run the world will exploit and extract and rape the ground,
Wow.
and versus protect, serve. So, looking at those dynamics, how important would you say understanding the original Constitution, which is from the origins of the ancestors, and we won't call it Constitution, but we'll say the original document or the original way of transcending. Tell us, why is that more important than what Western civilization offers?
Well, I mean, you hit it right on the head with the documentation, because everything that I'm speaking is documented.
Right.
Right, written on the walls in Kemet, right?
Okay.
Found what they consider, in the graves of our ancestors, the scrolls. So these values and principles run very deep and are very powerful, because if you remember, I stated that Shetawat enjoins equality between all people. It's
Right.
not making no distinction as far as based off of race or any of those things, right? Because Mayat is Mayat.
That's right.
Right. Mayat doesn't pick and choose the way a lot of systems like to pick and choose.
Sure.
Who gets justice and who don't get justice. That's not justice.
Right.
Whatsoever, right? So that's why the weighing of the heart ceremony is so important, right? Because your heart basically carries all your deeds and actions and your thoughts.
Sure.
And it's weighed against the feather of Mayat. So, our ancestors, and they didn't put these things together overnight. It took observation for thousands and thousands of years, and that's one thing that we need to understand, is the depths of the knowledge and the wisdom of our ancestors. And we had within us a genetic memory bank, right, that we had to get kick-started, right, so that we'll know who we are.
That's right.
And this is the thing, because a lot of people be like, well, we don't know our own language, we're speaking a foreign language, right? And that's true. But at the same time, right, the mind goes beyond the words.
Yes.
And the words are symbols of expression.
That's right.
Right. So when we can express ourselves in a way where we can understand, that we have to fight for liberation and what liberation is,
Right.
and exploitation, right? We bring back the ways of our ancestors, right? Because even before the invasions of Africa, we knew to put on our temples, know thyself, right? Because we knew that was the main purpose of life. Mm-hmm. Of course, after thousands and thousands of years, things happen. People see the riches of Africa, and they go and they plot, right? Like when we discussed the Papal Bull from Pope Nicholas V, right? Basically, which gave Portugal the right to go into Africa and enslave anyone that wasn't a Christian, right? We didn't know their plans.
That's right.
We're at home. We believe in sharing resources. We have welcomed the world in, and the world has continued to come in and take advantage and exploit Africa, right? For their resources, right? For the human resources, which is us, the capital, human capital,
Yes.
right? So when we get back to who we are, right? And this is not just for us here in the United States or the diaspora. This is also for our brothers and sisters, on the continent, because of colonialism and imperialism and now neo-colonialism, right? Where we've been hitting the head so hard, where we don't even understand who we are or our connection to one another or our connection to the netters, right? And that's what nature comes from, netters. That's why Shetawat netter, and from the Creator and creation. So when we get back to our documents, what it does is strengthen our consciousness, right? And consciousness is power. So once we strengthen our consciousness, we understand our responsibility, and Shetawat netter helps, right? Like with number 13, the proper raising and education of the children, right? And all the other values, right? They give us a focus and as far as what we ought to do. And, we can break down, some more things as far as, dealing with spirituality, spiritual development, dealing with our culture, right? And culture is very important, right? Because our culture is also based off of Maya. So, some of the foundational, values that we need to understand about our culture, right? Because unfortunately, a lot of us people think that hip hop is our culture. That's not our culture. Right. Our culture is based off of language, communication, right? The way we speak to one another, right? Customs, courtesies, roles, rituals, and we can discuss a couple of rituals later, like the opening of the mouth ceremony and the weighing of the heart ceremony, which I've already discussed, right? Our thoughts, our values, manners of interaction, the way we interact with one another, right? Expected behavior, right? Our practices, right, and our relationships with one another. So, all of these cultural values are high values, right, that bring us closer together on the path of Maya. Did you have a question, sister?
I do. Brother Kevin, and I hear you loud and clear when you say when we get back to the origins of those principles. One of the things that I've seen the pattern of, and, an example would be our other children, which would be the indigenous people of this land, who were kind, who, like you said, we gave our resources because that's part of our customs. Right. And so they gave their resources and their knowledge on how to survive in this environment or on this continent to Europeans. Right. And they were slaughtered, 15 million. Right. Now, when we go back to the origins, because they are extinct almost, right, it's a handful of them left, and we survived the Holocaust. Right. When we go back, we will become who we were from the beginning, loving, resourceful, right, giving. However, tell us, how do we now reach the same offenders of generation after generation? Because we can go back, but how do we stop an enemy who is known for its savagery? Right. That no matter how kind or how resourceful or how giving we are, they continue to become brute. What in our, and I think, I asked this because that was the argument between Martin Luther King, was Martin Luther King the nonviolent? Everybody wants to talk about the nonviolent approach versus Malcolm, who was by any means necessary. And I won't say that's the opposite of nonviolent, because he still didn't invoke violence. Right. He just said protect yourself. Right. But we're dealing with savages and lawbreakers of every kind. Yes. Tell us when we get back, because I believe we're going back to our place of origin, spiritually and naturally, and all will benefit. How do we reach that population that has shown us its savagery generation after generation after generation?
Well, to be honest, I don't think you can reach that population. The Nation of Islam, they have in their teachings, the question is asked, can you reform the devil? And the answer is emphatically no. Right? You can't reform the devil. So you got to understand, and that's why history is so important. Because we have to learn, from, and I don't even want to call them mistakes from our ancestors. Because, the nature of our ancestors, we had a high moral behavior code, just like the Native Americans.
Yes.
Right? We knew how to treat guests. If somebody come into your land or whatever, because we were, humanitarians, always been humanitarians, right? So when you can't ignore history.
That's right.
And you cannot ignore the behavior of others, right? And you definitely can't ignore a group of people who have mental illnesses and mental diseases, right? And who need to be evaluated and examined. Right. But unfortunately, they the ones who always want to do the evaluating and examining, right? True. And that's to keep the onus off of them, right? So we have to look at it for what it is, right? So based off of history, they can't be trusted, right? Regardless of any type of treaty that they're trying to sign, any type of agreement, any type of amendment in the Constitution, right? Because like when we had discussed the time about the Pledge of Allegiance, when they have us saying liberty and justice for all, that's not the truth. That's a lie. That's not Maya. Right. That's basic and fundamental, right? But what we'll do is we'll deny what's obvious and what's in our face, right? So when we get to where we need to get to as a people, and like you said, we will get there, right? But it's going to take a conscious movement, by the masses and organizing.
That's true.
And it's a lot of great things that's going on now in Africa. It's great things that's going on here, right? But the enemy is always working hard to keep their foot on our neck.
That's true.
Right? Because they know that the only way that they can basically stay on top is to keep us on the bottom.
Sure.
Right? And when you look at this country, right, and like as Brother Essence has stated earlier, right, as far as, the two young brothers that was found hung in Mississippi the day after we did the podcast on countering and combating modern day lynching. Yes. Right? So we understand that that's fit. Right? Them young brothers didn't murder themselves. That's right? True. So what we had to do.
Wait a minute. As such, as your council member, Corey Branch, and according to your conversation, insinuating.
Right. Yeah, he said he was told that it was a suicide. You know what I mean? And now they're trying to report it as a suicide. But we know better, right? Because our consciousness is raised enough to understand that these practices have been taking place on this land, for over 500 years. And it's also important for us, to understand and be honest about where we stand in this country, right?
That's good.
And because we can't deny, when you still have, young brothers getting lynched in 2025. It should have never happened. We should never get, I don't care what year it is.
Right. Yeah.
That should never be, because that's not only injustice, but that's just plain wickedness, right? And that's the type of, enemy that we're dealing with. So to appeal to their moral sentences will never work. Our mission and our job is to help to wake up our brothers and sisters so that we can come together, right, and do what's necessary, for us to not only be able to sustain ourselves, but to become a world power as a people, so that there can be divine justice on this planet. Because divine justice will only come when the black man and the black woman is sitting on the throne.
And another thing is that just to knowing ourselves, to know that we got the power within us. A lot of times we separate ourselves and spirit. So we thinking it's something that's outside of us. So so now that gets us to idolizing falsehood. I don't want to say but idolizing falsehoods, illusional things, material things that will pass away. We get involved more with cars or finances, things of that nature, and that becomes what we're living off of, instead of understanding who we actually are and how we do connect with nature and just knowing ourselves, and then we will have a love for one another, and when we got that love for one another, then we can rise and sit back on our throne. And it's enough land here to coexist.
Right.
But we will have to protect ourselves to implement our own way of life. So, it's a constant, it's an uphill battle still at this time, but it's reachable, it's attainable, and the first steps is love for yourself. And when I say yourself, I mean if you know who you are and you got the understanding of who you are, then you're gonna love your brothers and your sisters the same.
That's right.
That's true.
Yeah. So and that takes me to the Arushits, or the 7 energy consciousness centers.
Right.
And that represents where a person may be in their consciousness as it relates to spiritual development, growth, or the lack thereof. And with the spiritual development, as I was just saying, that helps us gain that trust and love for one another. And when we trust and love in one another, as Mali, Niger, and
Right.
Burkina Faso, how they're now coming together, and other bordering countries are talking about aligning also.
Yeah.
because they the awakening came, and they like, what, we can be self-sufficient.
Right.
We do have all the tools and power we need.
That's
So-
powerful. And let me say this, what the display of what we see even between those three is saying that unity is more powerful, is the most powerful resource.
Yeah.
Because now you can manage the resources adequately and use those not as a weapon against, but a weapon for humanity. A lot of times, we've seen where resources have been used against the people
Right.
versus for the people.
Right.
And the power of unity says that we don't have to own it all. We can share.
Yes.
Yes.
We can come together as a unit. And we're seeing the very principles that Brother Kevin Ausar has spoken displayed amongst 3 leaders. And you're really not a leader until you can abase yourself low, humble yourself enough to unify. There is no power in division.
That's right.
And so they
That's
understood that we're more powerful together than we are apart. And that's what has been the tactic of Western civilization
Yes.
for centuries, is to keep everyone divided and at each other,
Right.
or in survival mode. Well, as humans, we should never be in survival mode, because survival is for animals.
Right.
Survival is for those who don't know where their next meal will come from. Well, we know that as the creator, he created enough for us to be sustained for the rest of our lives.
Definitely.
So why would we have to fight, rob, steal, or manipulate anything to live on this planet, because it was already given? As a matter of fact, there is nothing on the earth that really belongs to us, because we're only here for a small amount of time.
Right.
So, to fight and have all this power, the illusion of having the power, you really don't have any power. What you have is an understanding that we're all human and we need the same things. These values are a constant for us all, not for one, but for all. Yeah. And we would not suffer anyone to suffer in a society where we don't even own. We don't own. I get tickled when people say, "Well, I own the land," and I remember, right? You don't pay your taxes, they'll come and strip you tomorrow. Even the natives. I remember a chief, European, asked one of the chiefs, "Can I buy this land from you?" He said, "Well, you can have everything that I can't take with me."
Almost. Yeah.
And he knew there was nothing on his land that he could take with him. So he was like basically telling me, I can't have it and you can't either. We're just stewards while we're here. And I think, I don't even know where that concept came from, is that I own Mars. You purchase what? You know, like, how far does your mind allow you to go? And I think that's what makes the comparison to sound doctrine,
Right.
sound principles that you spoke of,
Right.
so powerful. Because on the opposite end is a mind that is so far gone till they don't have any boundaries. What makes you think you can wake up and own pieces of Mars?
You're right.
Right.
What makes you wake up and think that I can own a human? And their children who've not been born yet.
Yeah, right.
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 And will your children off to the next person when I die. I can write in my will, like, how sick do you have to be? How mentally disturbed do you have to be? And I think what we really have to do in this day and age, like you said, Brother Ausar, knowing thyself, also it alludes to a teaching that erupts the lies.
Indeed.
Yes.
That's right.
That's right.
When we know ourselves, we give back to humanity and
That's
creation
exactly right.
Right.
That's right.
the right way to think of, or to, like you said, channel or get your mind under control. What's that? What's that principle, Brother Ken?
Control your thoughts.
Control your thoughts, because evidently someone has given humanity the permission just to let their minds go do whatever.
Yeah.
And if I can do it, it must be okay for me to have. And that is absolutely not true.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's pretty asinine. And controlling the thoughts is a big. I think that's the first. That's the first virtue.
Is that the first
In-
virtue?
in
I remember I'm
initiation.
learning, but it
Yeah.
sounds good.
Right, because you got to remember, before let there be light, you got to think, let there be light.
Light,
You
right,
know,
right.
A thought sparks every idea.
Yes.
So let's. I want to move into these 7 centers, energy consciousness centers, and Dr. Kim, believe me, I've seen them all.
Okay.
And I have read them all before, but I'm still learning also. So
Okay.
sometimes you might even hear me asking it might be the same question, but in
No.
a different way, because I'm
Right.
getting an understanding also.
Sure.
So we're here together. But the seven. So let's start. I'm gonna try to say, and I got these written down here. I'm gonna try to say the proper name. Shishat.
Right.
Shishat, which is the root center. Number 2 would be tech,
Right.
which is the
Sexual
sexual
organ.
organ.
Right.
Yeah, I was trying to find another word.
It's a real word.
Yeah, and 3 ab.
Right.
Ab is the stomach,
Right.
the stomach organ, and 4th, and I think those first 3 is the lower self on the side, proper side
Yes,
of
considered to be the lower self. Correct.
considered to be the lower self, and I think that's important as you continue to learn the whole principles. I mean, all the principles once it gets to Semitawi and all.
Right.
So and then once you get the 4th, which is Kepper, which is the heart center, and then 2nd, the throat center, the 3rd eye or the pineal gland is called the myrrh, and IKH, ik. I could be saying it all the way wrong, but that's the crown. That's the crown center. So, if you may, can you please explain how those work?
Yes. Okay. Many people understand the Rushats, or the energy consciousness centers as chakras, right? That's
Right.
what it's called in India, right? So the chakras, right? But I like to say energy consciousness centers or
Yeah.
Rushats, right? So the root, the base, right, is dealing with when it's on the lower vibrational frequency and you haven't raised your consciousness and you're within your lower self, that's when you're just thinking about your basic instincts, like, food, shelter, clothing, and that's where your consciousness is, right? And that's not so much a bad thing, but that's just where you are at the time. But the goal and objective is to change your root chakra, right, into being a strong foundation, right, and understanding Maya, so that when we are getting food, shelter, and clothing and things of that nature, we understand that that's part of the grand design as far as living on this planet, right? So what we want to do is raise our consciousness where we understand that there's more to life than just food, shelter, and clothing, and the basic things. Right?
That's good.
And then we go to the sexual organ chakra, right, which is called the tech. And it's important to understand the tech is what we raised in Africa, in Kemet. Many people call it the obelisk, right? It represents the phallus, and it also represents spiritual power, right? And just like the phallus helps to give life when it enters into the womb of a female, right? So the importance of the tech is that, well, we don't get caught up in our sexual organs and understand it just for pleasure, but it's for creation, procreation, right? And understanding that it also represents power of the next generations to come.
You better say that,
because
brother.
that's where the generations come from.
All right, wait a minute, brother.
Right.
Brother
So-
Kevin, go ahead on and teach on. Wait a minute, I just want to give him wait a minute, just stop. Did y'all hear that? I mean, just wait a minute. Hold on now, because we do a whole lot of discussion on this show.
Right.
But almost 80% of our issues come from the misuse of our body.
Yeah, I understand.
Come on, wait a minute now. Hold on. Our bodies is our temple, and we misuse this body, like you said, from sex, from our gluttony.
Right. And we're about to get to that. Gluttony, yes.
But, from all of these things that Western civilization has given us the freedom without any discipline or parameters or
Promotes it.
at all.
Yeah.
And so we are paying dearly for these atrocities against principles that were placed here for us. So for me, when he said the next generation, what are we passing on? For them to even understand that are we passing off a more selfish understanding of life where our children are even in a worse predicament? So I'm so glad to know that not just these principles are out here, but they're being taught to our youth.
Right.
Because what good is it if it's not even taught, or if they don't even know it exists? Remember, without these principles, Brother Ausar, these children feel like they're free to do whatever.
Indeed.
We are not thinking generational at all. We're thinking, have a baby, put some Nikes on them. If you're too poor, try to get them into the NFL. Try to get out we're in survival mode constantly. Nobody is talking about. We had to pause on that because that is powerful.
It is. Right.
This is the way we are governing our lives, and what are we passing on to the next generation, brother? That was awesome.
Yeah, and I think it's important for us to understand that these are consciousness centers, right? So that's where our awareness is. The third one is the ab, right? Which is the stomach, right? And when we're operating with, you said gluttony, greed, right? Avarice, which are lower aspects of the mind, right? So we have to turn that around and raise our consciousness within our ab, where we understand selfless service. Right, one of the principles in Shetawat Netta, right? Shetawat Netta enjoins the performance of selfless service to family, community, and humanity, right? And also Shetawat Netta enjoins the sharing of the resources. So we're not being greedy. We're sharing with one another because we understand that we all a family, right? So once we change, see, if those three lower energy consciousness centers, if you don't raise the consciousness where you understand there's more to life than just food, shelter, and clothing.
Right.
And there's more to life than just having sex. That you have an organ for a divine purpose,
Right.
and that's to procreate. And if you don't understand that you're not to be greedy and want to hoard everything for yourself,
That's
the
right.
way the Western world does,
Right.
under Western philosophy, Western psychology, but that we share our resources. Once we raise our consciousness there, because if we don't raise them, we can never make it to the fourth chakra,
Okay.
right? Which is the Kepler, which is the heart chakra.
All right now.
Because the heart has to open up to all, into creation, right? Into humanity, into the creator, right? You're not just thinking about yourself and your family, but you're thinking about all. You're thinking about nature. You're thinking about
It's
everything.
powerful. Yeah.
Right? So once you're able to get to the heart chakra, then you can go to the fifth chakra, the throat chakra, which is Sikkim. And Sikkim is power, right? So Makaru, true of speech, with power,
Right.
And then we go to the sixth chakra, which is the pineal gland,
Come
the
on.
myrrh,
Come on.
right? And the myrrh is also a name for the pyramids, right? And at the top of the pyramid was what? The eye. So the myrrh is dealing with the third eye, where we have spiritual enlightenment. And we'll get to that too when we talk about the 9 parts of the spirit, or Ku, right?
Wow.
And once you become spiritually enlightened, you become wise. And then we have the Ik, which is the crowning chakra, right? And it doesn't sit on top of the head, it sits above, which represents transcendental consciousness that goes beyond the physical and the spiritual realm,
Right.
And so that's the goal, right? To know thyself. So those 7 energy consciousness centers, or arushas, are basically, it helps us to understand where we are in our consciousness, right? And that's why we have to raise our level of consciousness. And this is also, basically serpent power yoga, right? Because
You own it.
when we understand the serpents and what they represent, which is creativity and the spirit, and goes up the spine, right? And then once you become Ik, it's the serpent in the sky, Buto, where you raised your level of consciousness, right, to heavenly realms. And that's the goal, and that's the objective.
Yeah, speaking of the goals that you want to get to, I got a quick story, personal. One of my tattoos I got a pyramid tatted on me. But the goal that we saying we all trying to get to, the capstone is lifted from off the top of the pyramid, and I have the all-seeing eye tattooed inside the capstone while it's lifted,
Right.
just to say, that's the transcender, the final transcender
Indeed.
that I'm reaching for.
It's powerful.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
And it should be all of our goal. It should be, and that's not spoken of, and that is why it's so important that this is even put on any media platform or any place where people can hear, because we live most of our lives in the consciousness of the realm that we can see, nothing above in the spirit world.
Right.
And let me say how perverted it is. It's so perverted, the teaching, until they've only provided 1 day a week for spirituality. But it's supposed to be the highest goal.
Every
Right.
day.
Right.
It's supposed to be something that we practice every day until we
Yes.
reach it. But they only reserve it for about 2 hours on a Sunday,
Yes.
or what have you. The rest of what we learn is how to be selfish, self-centered, do it myself. It's all about me. So most of what we are taught is how to survive in that lower realm.
Yes,
Right.
indeed.
Versus, so now, of course, you have robberies. Of course, you have breaking and entries. And then you pride yourself on crime and punishment.
Right.
No, you've been teaching it wrong from the beginning.
Right, indeed.
And so now you have to praise yourself when the abnormal happens. We're low on crime. You were supposed to never have crime,
That's right.
because nothing belongs to us to steal.
Right.
What you're stealing for, it don't even belong to us either. That's why we can give it away. We can share it,
That's right.
because it was never ours from the
Right.
beginning.
Exactly.
So until we learn
right.
these powerful principles, we're always going to have the false God or the false teaching that, trying to obtain something that never was ours from the beginning. And we don't even have a long enough lifespan on this side of naturality
Right.
for us to even consume it.
That's right.
And that's why we're called. And it's so funny because this society will even legalize our own atrocities against us.
After they taught us how to commit those atrocities.
Yes. Then they will legalize. They will make it legal for you to kill yourself.
Right. So,
You know, we have to have these principles, Brother Ausar.
yes.
We have to have these conversations. We have to put those things back into the society of all societies, so that we can better, create generations of the ultimate.
Right.
Well, and Dr. Kim,
Yes, sir.
I'm listening to you, and I see, and I appreciate it, the receptiveness, because, unfortunately, as adults, a lot of times we have our minds made up on certain things without really even giving anything a chance. Or
That's
giving
true. I
our
agree.
ancestors' knowledge a chance. That's why, we love working with the children, because they are sponges and they
Right.
absorb the knowledge and information, right? And their minds and their consciousness hasn't been shaped in a way where they become anti-black and anti-African.
That's good.
Which happens a lot of times in basically the way that we're taught, because we're taught to think that we're lesser, right? But as you can see, our ancestors, they were more than on point.
What?
Oh
yeah.
They was more than on point, and I think that it's a lot to what our ancestors put together, and it's so deep, like that you can study it for 1,000,000 years and still you just hit a fraction of what is to be studied, right? And I think that we've been miseducated to the point where we're taught to look at the European, the white man, and their standards, right? But as we can see, their standards can't stand up to our standards.
It cannot.
Because
Come on.
our standards are based off of Maya, truth, justice, and righteousness, balance, order, harmony, reciprocity.
Yes.
And it involves the development of the mind, the development of the spirit. One of the classes we had with the students a month ago, and this comes from the book of Ptah as well, is one of the very first principles. Well, I have to say this first. One of the is hearing well. Hearing well is speaking well.
Right.
He who loves to hear acts on what is said, right? So we have to listen to the proper instructions.
That's
right?
good.
The second one was good speech, right? Which is very important. And we often talk about, the downside of hip hop and rap music and the bad speech and what it does to the psyche.
Come on.
But good speech does good things for the psyche. And that's why when we had the class with the children about a month ago about good speech, let's watch what we say to one another, right? That's why, when we talked about the cultural values, expected behavior, and manners of interaction, how do we interact with one another? Let's not only have good speech, but let's be good neighbors to one another, right?
Yeah.
And that's why when Shetawat Netta, it says Shetawat Netta enjoins the performance of selfless service to family, community,
Oh,
and humanity.
come on.
Right.
See, and that's not just being a good neighbor, what you say, but being a good neighbor on a worldwide basis, being
right.
a good world citizen.
That's right.
Which I think should be the goal, for all of us.
That's right.
So I really appreciate, that, you see the value of what our ancestors brought
Yes.
forth,
Right.
right? And I feel like, all of our brothers and sisters and every child, should learn these values.
Yeah.
And one person that I want to, they often look at Imhotep as a person, as a great man, a vizier, to the king, the pharaoh. He was a philosopher. Imhotep built the first pyramid, the step pyramid, right? He was the father of medicine. Him and his doctors were able to come up with cures for all kinds of illnesses and diseases.
Sure.
And, he was a philosopher, and he taught the philosophy of Maya. But one thing I like to say, because, it's a lot of credit given to Imhotep, as he should be. But to understand, Imhotep represents a group of people, African people,
Okay.
black people, just like Ptah, because he didn't build the pyramid by himself.
Right.
It took skilled craftsmen, right, to be able to build them pyramids that still stand today.
That's powerful.
Just like in the medicine field, the medical field, where he's the father of over 2,000 years before Hippocrates, the Greek king.
Right.
Right. And what they was able to do. And, it's just amazing, when we study, and see the greatness where we come from.
Right.
You know, I spoke with my Jegna the other day. I talked to him often, you know, and I was telling him about some things I was running across, you know, on social media, the internet, where, you know, you had brothers and sisters saying that, you know, we're not our ancestors, like they were saying something great, you know, and my Jegna, Baba Akmo, he said, well, who are they then? Right? Because we are our ancestors. And we have to take pride in understand that if it weren't for the strength of our ancestors, we wouldn't be here
Not at all.
today.
Not
And we
at all.
must pay reverence and honor
That's right.
to our ancestors.
And let me,
Right.
and they will, and see, they'll tell us that we're not supposed to honor our dead, but they will make us honor their dead.
Well,
See,
for it.
they call
Of
it
course.
dead, right? But we call it eternal life.
Of course,
Right?
of
Because
course.
they live through us, right? Just like the future generations will live through them, right? So that's important when we understand that we are spirit, and the spirit
Yes.
cannot be killed,
That's right.
right? Even though they try to kill our spirit, right? But the spirit lives on, and that's why we're here today, because we're trying to educate our brothers and sisters to look at our ancestors' teachings.
That's right.
Believe in yourself. Believe in your brothers and sisters, because we've been taught not to believe in each other, not to listen to nothing the black man or black
It's
woman
true.
has to say.
That's true.
And we got to get away from that. And we need to open our ears and open our minds and open our hearts and listen to what someone has to say. Like when the brother was talking about converse with the ignorant as well as the wise.
Yeah.
And let me
I
say,
think, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, brother.
Because I think the point Dr. Kim was trying to get to was that they send false narratives out there to keep us from trusting or
that's true.
or looking into, or, you know, just studying our ancestors.
That's right.
You know, the spirituality of our ancestors, like some of the traditions of Ifa, or even Rastafari.
Right.
You know, some of those old traditions, but they want us to, you know,
Second guess or look sideways at some of the things that our
Right.
ancestors have
They-
placed
they
as if
start
they're either demonic or even
Right.
satanic. They try to
start calling it Satanism,
right,
or
right.
black
They
magic.
right. Is that like we're just demonized and possessed? You know, that's a powerful, yes, absolutely. And let me say this, you know, I feel as if my calling is more to bridge that education, because standing alone, the principles that you have provided us or that our ancestors have provided us have been so demonized
Right.
till it alone, no one is comparing it to what we have so greatly or widely accepted.
Yeah.
The Constitution. You'll have people going to school, blacks that will go to school so they can know how to defend the Constitution. I mean,
Right.
President Obama was a constitutionalist. Eric Holder, your Attorney General.
Yes, indeed. That's right.
And look how far we got. We're trying to understand their way of doing things. And, you know, even our best of the best, our creme de la creme, understanding their ways does not help us in today's society.
Right.
So then sometimes we have to show off
Right.
as to why we should go back home and adopt what has already been given. Not just for us, but for all humanity
right.
to live.
Yes.
You know, and if that argument has not been made, that's why I'm so happy that I'm proud that we have, Brother Ausar has placed this as one of the agendas. Brother Essence, you've, you know, done your homework to say I'm still learning, but that's what we all are.
That's right.
We are at a place where we now have to say it's okay for us to even know ourselves.
Right.
No, you follow me? Because they've given us the narrative that we're supposed to know
Right.
about ourselves.
Right.
And that is not ourselves.
That's
It's
right.
not.
It's the furthest thing. So again, you know, how powerful of a tool this is to keep reiterating,
Right.
to
Indeed.
keep teaching, to keep our children, you know, focused. That way they can use this as an immune
Right.
to the lies.
That's exactly right.
Everybody's talking about vaccinations. But I even go back to Brother Essence when he talked about the tattoo. Well, they have that same tattoo. And it is on your dollar bill.
Yep. So,
And so here's what they did, like usual, is they took something that was spiritual and powerful and lowered it and placed it on the dollar bill,
Yeah.
whereby now we go from a high consciousness where there is no monetary value. We are the value. And now you place everything on the dollar bill to be the value.
Yeah.
And if you don't got that dollar bill, you starve to death.
Uh-huh.
If you don't have that dollar bill, you are homeless. It goes against
All
everything that Brother Ausar,
All principles.
all principles. Look at how perverted. It's almost like they can't take spirituality and just make it what it is. They have to own that narrative as well.
And the irony of it is, they know more about us than we do.
It's true.
You was moving towards saying that they have us worshiping their dead,
Yes.
which we don't say it in that language.
Right.
But that's because they, they know to move us. I think what they're doing is trying to move us further away from ourselves.
Yes.
And implementing their culture. I mean, cold-heartedly, like you said, the dollar system, and this is what gets us into the trouble or the fussing and fighting one another because, again, keep saying the same thing because we don't know ourselves.
It's true.
And now we worshiping or fussing and fighting, ego and pride gets involved. We fussing and fighting, we worshiping different things from the cause or, something that'll go away that don't really exist.
Right.
Material things is what rules over here right now. And this takes me into Simitawi, which is the unification of the higher self and the lower self. And so I think the way they said, like the ancestors unified upper and lower Kemet, which is ancient name for Egypt now, and so the unification of it. But the thing was the unification of spirituality, right? Right. So, and spirituality is a major part of our African culture and traditions. So the spiritual system of Simitawe is the union between the higher and lower self. Can you give the 5 main rituals practiced in the Simitawe?
Yes, indeed, brother. And I'm glad you called them rituals because rituals are very important. Rituals are what we do in our daily lives, right? And a lot of times, basically, they're done not only in our private lives, but out in public at events and ceremonies and festivals and things of that nature, right? And it's symbolic of something, right? When we practice rituals, right? And Simitawi, like you said, the union between the higher self and lower self is what a lot of people know as yoga, right? Which is the union between the higher self and the lower self. And, the first one that I like to talk about is, and these are the Shetis, right? Remember I said Shetwat Net enjoying Sheti, spiritual investigation is the highest endeavor in life, right? So now we're about to investigate our minds and our spirit through the wisdom teachings. And what the wisdom teachings help us with is our reasoning and our intellect. Right. Right. And so we have all kinds of wisdom teachings. We have hymns, we have poems, we have stories. Like the story of Ausar, Aset, and Haru. That's the story that we're going to make a play out of with the children, which is showing the union between the higher self in the lower self. So that the wisdom teachings are very important, right? Then you got the teachings of our set, right? And there are thousands of wisdom teachings and ways that we learn, right? Like what we're doing now is an aspect of wisdom teaching, sharing knowledge, right? Raising the consciousness from a lower level to a higher level. That's right. So then after wisdom teachings, I like to talk about meditation, right? Which is very important because what meditation helps with is focus in the will. That's right. Right? Because the will is so important. Because if you got the knowledge of self and you don't have the will,
That's right.
you're not going to do too much.
Right.
So what the meditation does, it helps you get your thoughts in order. Remember, the first principle of the 10 virtues of initiate, control your thoughts.
That's right.
So meditation is a great way of organizing your thoughts to be able to control your thoughts, right? So then after that, we have righteous action as a shedi, right? Righteous action is doing the right thing, which is what? Maya,
That's right.
right? Selfless service to family, community, and humanity. That's righteous action, doing the right thing, right? And then after that, we have devotional love, right? And that was, remember, when we was doing the 7 energy consciousness centers or the Rushats, where you couldn't advance until to the 4th chakra, which is the most important one, the heart chakra, right? So devotional love is dealing with the heart chakra. When you have love for all of creation, all of humanity, and it's not no selfish love, but it's a selfless love, right? So devotional love helps to bring the union between the higher self and the lower self, because we have a divine understanding, and then we have balance, which is Maya. And then we have the serpent power yoga, right? Which is basically what we went through as far as the Rushat, the 7 energy consciousness center, right? Serpent power, raising that energy up the spine, right? To where it becomes Buto in the sky, serpent in the sky. And then it's another yoga, tantric yoga, right? Because remember we talked about the phallus or the sexual organ, right? So when a man and a woman, and remember we talked about raising the consciousness, what we understand is to procreate. So tantric yoga is when a man and a woman come together in a divine union to create, right? So these different forms of raising our consciousness, right, and bringing our lower self and connecting it with our higher self are very important. And these are lifelong teachings. They're not teachings that you master and then you're done with them. Because it takes constant studying. It takes constant meditation, because the one thing we're trying to do is expand our consciousness, right? Because we don't want our consciousness to contract. And that's what happens a lot of times, when we already have our minds made up. And one thing, that, we like to share with the children is, if I got this bottle, right? And if it's closed, I can't get nothing in it. So if I got a closed mind, I can't get nothing in it. But if I open it up, I can put something in it.
Right.
But it gets full. So you got to let it out. And that's why we teach. And that's why it's important that we teach one another, the values that our ancestors put forth, right? Because the teachings are to be shared. Knowledge is to be shared. Knowledge is to be passed down. Knowledge is not to be just kept for yourself and then you become proud. And that's why the brother said, don't be proud in your knowledge. Don't be arrogant in your knowledge. From the book of Ptah-hotep. Because the knowledge didn't just come from you. The knowledge came from your ancestors who observed the universe and nature for thousands of years, right? To come up with these beautiful concepts and these divine truths, right? That's based off of Maya and based off of lived experience.
So, how can the practice of Semitawi bring balance to mind, body, and spirit in today's world?
Yes, indeed, because that's what it's about. See, these teachings are eternal and infinite in nature. These teachings will always hold true, right? When we practice them. So when we practice the wisdom teachings, it helps us out to be able to think clearer and have a lucid mind, right? Because, the 3 states of the mind is agitated, dull, and lucid, right? And agitation comes from distractions, like we talk about every week. People watching football games on Sunday. It's a distraction. Especially we just had 2 of our young brothers murdered and hung, and we're going to go and put on some jerseys and sit right next to the enemy, right? So, we have to raise our consciousness and understand, what's really important and what we might need to focus on, right? And that's where meditation comes in, right? Because when we're meditating, right, we're basically focusing, and it's helping to strengthen our will on those things that are important, right? And this takes us back to the 10 virtues: steadfastness in purpose.
Right.
We have to be steadfast in our purpose to know thyself, right? But that's the main purpose of life. There are other purposes and things that we have to do to bring justice to this world, right? Because the responsibility of those of us who have the knowledge of self is a responsibility to humanity, because we know that this is an unjust world.
Yes.
Right? And in Shetawat Netta, it teaches us, number 6, Shetawat Netta enjoins the protection of the weak and oppressed. So we have to protect one another. So those cemeteries, what they do is help strengthen us. Devotional love,
Yes.
right? It teaches us to have self-knowledge and self-love, right? I am because we are, therefore I am. The focus is on the group, right? So what
That's
that
good.
does, devotional love, it helps us to understand it ain't all about me. You know, me. You know how everybody like to beat their chest and things of that nature. No, it's about us.
It's true.
It's
true.
about all of us coming together, working together, right?
Right.
Because that's the way our ancestors did it.
It's
Our
true.
ancestors, that's where a lot of our ancestors, I'm talking about recent ancestors as well.
That's true.
Even after all the trauma, humiliation, and atrocities, we still come together in peace and love.
Right.
Right?
That's true.
Whether we had knowledge of self or not. But that's the goal. Because the reason that we don't have the knowledge of self, it was beat out of us. But it's also important to understand, even before the invasions of our enemies, that was still the goal, to know thyself. Because remember, no one is born wise. So we have to be taught and we have to be instructed. And we have to find authentic, genuine preceptors and teachers and grandmaster teachers who want to help to push the agenda forward for us, for liberation, independence, and world power.
That's good.
Right. So one of my favorite books, The Moorish Holy Quran, or the Circle 7 by Noble Joy Ali.
Aye, yeah,
Yeah.
great book.
So in chapter 3, the unities of life, he states, the lower self is rich in promises, but poor in blessedness and peace. It offers pleasure, joy, and satisfying gain, but gives unrest, misery, and death. The higher self is the embodiment of truth. The higher self is I'm sorry, my phone wrong. All right, but the higher self is the embodiment of truth. The higher self is human spirit cloth with soul. So what I'm asking, what I want to know is that, what does it mean to master the duality? Like, to bring them both together.
That's a really good question, right? And so basically, the duality, I want to talk about the Sahu, which is one part of the spirit, right? It's when your mental, psychological attributes align with your spiritual attributes, right? And you become enlightened. So to master oneself spiritually and mentally is a constant work, right? And that's why, the meditation is so important. And this brings me to, because for one, when we understand our ancestors, they were just so brilliant, right? And one of the stories with the wisdom teachings is the deathless snake, right? And what the deathless snake is the ego, right?
Yes.
And so this is why, spiritual development is so important, because we understand, the ego to be the senses, right? And to be, our physical senses as well, right? And our thoughts and our ego, right? But the spirit, right? So for instance, say, you could practice spiritual development, but somebody come, they say something, they trigger you, and the ego automatically rise
Right.
and be ready to strike, right? And so you think, I thought I had that under control. But remember, it's deathless.
Yeah.
You can't kill it, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
we're in this physical existence. So what we do with the deathless snake is we understand that we have to put a wedge between the spirit and understand that the spirit is higher than everything.
Right.
Right? And so when we understand that, and through controlling our thoughts, we don't react and we don't let our ego get in the way, because the ego is a part of the lower. So when we can combine, our spiritual attributes, our mental attributes, and things of that nature, the duality, right? What we do is we bring that into balance and realize that it is really one. Right? And another great example of that, right? And it's just like I said in Nebuchadnezzar with your sisters. One represents the spiritual, one represents the secular, right? But they're inverted, facing each other. They look just alike. It's one and the same. Right. It's just like when we went into the mystery schools a lot of times, right? We go in there with a mindset of duality, right? As above, so below. So we go through the double doors, right? But when we come out with one door, because we realize that all is one, and that's the unity, right? And so we understand that the physical is really the spiritual, and the spiritual is also the physical, because the physical is the manifestation of the spirit, which is our psychology and philosophy, and that is all the spirit and all its energy.
Okay. You want to go? Okay.
Well, I was going to ask, given how we have a great example of light.
Yes.
And light, when projected, moves everything else out the way. Right. It dispels darkness. So as we find ourselves, as we come to the knowledge of self, we are enlightened.
Okay.
But then that enlightenment also dispels darkness, or the lie.
Yes.
And so what I also see in this unveiling of truth is the responsibility, accountability, and the means by which we now challenge the lie with that truth. So no longer do we just hold that truth in as our own elevation, but we also have a responsibility and a duty to make sure that what is built from now on reflects that higher truth. Because oftentimes we know the truth, people go and look for that truth, but then there is no unction for them to make sure that the rest of creation is held to the same standard. Right. And so we usually just, tuck our little light away and try to, smile through darkness. Right. And then we become frustrated or even mentally oppressed in our own submersive submission to the darkness, even though we know there's a higher truth. And that in itself, when we pass that on to the next generation, is that is a legal offense in itself. It's for us to know the truth and not make sure that that truth is expounded and and then given openly. And that's why I like the ceremony where you talked about the changing tell me the name of the one we did September, like the changing of the weighing of the heart, yes, which was a open ceremony. Right. A lot of times if you'll notice how our enemies will do things outwardly, they will make sure we honor their foolish lies outwardly. Right. And we have something much greater. Yes. It is the greater. And it is not practiced openly on a continual basis. They worked for a whole week trying to make sure that this one young man had all the honor, even though it was built off lies. Right, indeed. How much more we have the true light for all humanity. What a great statement. What a great testimony to all creation is that we have something much more substantive. Yes. And it was built to never die. That's exactly right. We must continue to make sure that this light dispels darkness.
And you hit it right on the head.
Yes, sir.
When you say this light dispels darkness, because in our teachings it says clearly, knowledge dispels ignorance.
Come on. Come on.
And you hit it right on the head, Dr. Kim.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
Right. And what she's saying, it just takes me back to 5%ers, like the poor righteous teachers. Each one teach one.
Yes.
And also our duty is the upliftment of fallen humanity.
Yes.
So it's very important that we continue to shed the light, to enlighten others, to try to bring them from out of the darkness, the triple stages of darkness. And that takes me to the 9 parts of the spirit right now, because we're still trying to understand how to grow ourselves. Right. Enlightenment and knowledge is infinite, as we all know. So we want to continue to learn as always. So I want to go, the 9 parts of the spirit teaching is to help initiate or get in tune with the different functions of the divine spirit. In the 9 parts, well, but we know it's 9 parts spirit, but we know the spirit is only one. Right. So I don't know. Help me understand it. That's all right.
Yes, indeed, brother. I would definitely help you understand this, and I use Dr. Kim as an example. Okay. Dr. Kim is one person, correct?
Yes.
But she's a mother.
Okay.
Right? She's
Come
also
on
a
now.
grandmother.
Uh-huh.
She's also an aunt.
That's right.
She's also a niece. So she has more than one function depending on who she's talking to.
That's right.
Right? So the 9 parts of the spirit basically helps the mind, right, to understand higher realms of consciousness in dealing with our existence.
That's right.
Right? Dealing with the knowledge of self. This is the real knowledge of self, the knowledge of the spirit, the knowledge of the functions of the spirit, and how they tie into Maya and everything else that we've been going over, right? The Ka, right, is basically the divine spirit, which holds all other 8s of the spirit, right? So the divine Ka, right? I eat the Ka of Ausar, right? I eat the spirit of Ausar, meaning I take in all great things that Ausar does, right? So you have the Ka, divine spirit, you have the Ba, which is the soul, right? Which has the ability to transform itself, right? And that's how we transform ourselves through knowledge, raising our level of consciousness, right? So then we have Seekum, which is dealing with spiritual power. Sometimes we have to push that spiritual power out there. Then we have the Ab, and we went over the Ab when we was talking about the 7 energy consciousness centers, right? The Ab is, in this instance, the heart, right? The conscious, right? And then we have the Sahu. We talked about the Sahu. The attributes of the mental, the psychological, and the spiritual coming together, working together, right? And then we have the Kayat, which is the physical body, manifestation, which is spirit, right? And then we have the that was the Kayat. Then we had the Kabit,
Oh boy.
which is the Kabit is the shadow, right? It's like your aura.
Okay.
So somebody can come to you and they have a good aura, right?
Right.
You can see who it is before they even get there,
That's
right?
true.
So that's the kabit, the part of the spirit, and then you have the ren, which is your attribute, which is your name, which is spirit. I am a saw. That's why I say a knuckle saw, right? So it's a spiritual essence to who I am, and what I stand for. And I got like 8 attributes, and I had to live up to each and every one of those.
You're doing pretty good.
Attributes.
You're doing all right, brother.
Right. So these are I'm thinking I might have left the coup. I knew I was missing one. The coup, which is very important.
Right.
Right, because the coup is dealing with spiritual enlightenment.
Right.
The coup is an imperishable star that never sets. So when you become a coup, you become spiritually enlightened, where your light is always shining, and people can see that your light is shining. So these are 9 parts of the spirit that all work together, right? So sometimes we might have to exert spiritual power. Sometimes we might have to push out our spiritual intelligence.
Right.
Sometimes we might have to scream out a knuckle saw, our vein, that power, right? And then the soul, the transformation, right? We have to understand the bar and how important the bar is, right? Which is the soul, which also has a human component to it, right? When we come into the breath of life, right? So when we understand the 9 parts of the spirit and what their functions are, and when we meditate on them, right, what it does, it helps us to understand who we are, what our responsibilities are, what we ought to do, which spirit basically is at the forefront, even though it's one spirit. Right? Just like I'm one person, but who am I? Am I a father or am I a grandfather? It depends on who's in front of me. So a lot of times it depends on the situation, on which part of the spirit basically is at the forefront. Right? So it just goes to show our ancestors' intelligence, right? Because not only is it dealing with the mind, with the spirit, it's also dealing with the mind, right? Which carries us back to what? Control your thoughts. Which carries us to what? Meditation. Which carries us to what? Simitawi, right? The wisdom teachings, devotional love. Everything is interconnected and interdependent. And I just think that it shows the brilliance of our ancestors, the original scientists on this planet Earth.
Yes.
Right? Spiritual science.
Come on.
Right? Earth science. All the different sciences that our ancestors brought forth to creation. And it's important, for our brothers and sisters, right, to understand that we come from the greatest people to ever walk this planet Earth. Our ancestors who laid the foundation for all of humanity. Right? For us to be able to do what we do today with technology or anything, the foundation is always going to be Africa and Africans.
It's true.
Right. So with your the Ka, K-A.
Right.
Make sure everybody understands.
Yes, the Ka, divine spirit, right.
Right. So the Ka, the role of the Ka maintaining life force, how do we nourish it?
Oh my goodness. We nourish it through the shaddies, right? We nourish it through practicing the virtues of initiate. We nurture it through the rituals that we practice, right? Like meditation, right? The ritual of the wisdom teachings, the rituals of selfless service, giving back to humanity, giving back to the community, working with the children, right? Living a life of Maya, thinking Maya, speaking Maya, and doing Maya, understanding the value of the 10 virtues of initiate, right? Have the ability to distinguish right from wrong. We know right from wrong.
That's right.
And our enemies know right from wrong, but they continue to want to do wrong.
It's true.
That's why I always say, let's put their heart on the scales of Maya and watch how unbalanced it be. It's going to be a heavy heart. They'll never be able to ascend to realms of consciousness because their heart isn't right. And remember, before you can go to the 5th energy consciousness center, your heart has to be right.
That's true.
So like you say, the documents, the evidence, the teachings are all here, for us to understand and to learn. And I want to share, a couple of, great preceptors, grandmaster teachers that I've learned from through studying their books. I've already mentioned, my grandmaster teacher, Baba Atmos, but you have, Dr. Mawada Ashby.
Oh, yes.
Dr. Mawada Ashby, a great spiritual preceptor. You got Ashford Kwesi.
Oh, yeah.
Studied a lot of Ashford Kwesi. Very inspiring.
Yeah.
You got Dr. John Henry Clark.
Yes.
You got one of our great Sheikh Anti-Diop. All of them are great.
Yes.
Right? But see, it's like they're teaching on our culture. They're teaching on our history. They're teaching the knowledge of self. Right? Me, myself, personally, one of the things that attract me more to the knowledge of self than anything is spiritual development. Because what spiritual development does, it helps you stay focused and it helps you to practice and live a life of Maya.
Yeah.
That's good.
And we getting down to the sad part of the day where we got like 5 minutes left. But and I love to know, I wanted to ask about the Ba, which is, the soul, the personality, the Uk, Ark, you know,
The cool, yeah.
the cool, yeah, that's how you say it. Represent spiritual enlightenment, immortality,
Yes,
you know.
immortality. That's
Yeah.
right. That's why they call them imperishable stars, because they never set. They're always shining.
Right.
Right. And immortality is dealing with being deathless. Right. And that's why we have the Ark, which stands for eternal life.
Right. I got mine on today also.
Yes.
Hey, we gotta get down to it. But
Oh yeah, happy born day, brother. The day
Yes.
the brother born day.
today is
Happy birthday.
yeah, thank you. You know, we can represent it to the fullest today
Yes,
by
that's
dropping
right.
this knowledge.
Amen.
This is my gift. I'm enjoying this part here.
Yes.
So before we do start wrapping it up, I want to, you know, real quick, let's see if we could get through the 4 states of consciousness. The waking state, dream state, amen, which is the hidden one, and the transcendental state.
Yes, indeed.
Give a quick run on that.
Yes, indeed, brother. And these are very important because this is kind of like part of a creation story as well. Nebuchadnezzar being the all-encompassing divinity from which everything emanates. Right? Nebuchadnezzar, neither male nor female. Right? Because a lot of times we want to think of the creator as being a male or a female. Right? But from Nebuchadnezzar comes male and female. Right? And so you got Amen. Amen, which is the hidden spirit. But it represents the unconscious state. Not unconscious in the negative way, but unconscious in the way where it's automatic. Like our heart beats automatically.
Sure.
We breathe automatically without
Yes.
thinking. So when our consciousness gets to the point where we are practicing Maya automatically without even thinking about it,
That's
that's
powerful.
when it's unconscious. Right?
Right.
Amen.
That's
Then you got Ra. Right? So you got Amen, then you got Ra, which is the dynamic force, which is the dream state,
Okay.
the subconscious mind, right? That you take the teachings that you learn in the waking state into your dream state. And it helps to expand your consciousness because you're always working even in your dream state, right? So you got Amen Ra, and then you got Ptah, which is the physical manifestation, or the waking state, or the conscious mind, which is what we study during the conscious state when we're woke.
Right.
We read, we listen, we reflect on what we're reading and studying, and we meditate, right, in the conscious state, right? But what that does, it goes with us into the subconscious state.
Sure.
When we're dreaming, and that's when our knowledge starts to expand. And then when we in the deep sleep state, the Amen state, right, where there's no dreams, right, that's when things become automatic and we become well rested and we understand our divine purpose and what we are to do. So those are 4 different states of consciousness, right? But we also know that there are levels of consciousness, right? We're not dealing with the same thing. Because like when we spoke on the Energy Consciousness Center, you had the lower vibrational levels of consciousness and the higher vibrational levels of consciousness. And what we had to do in order to raise our consciousness is first raise the lower levels of consciousness to meet the high levels of consciousness.
And,
Powerful.
yeah. Dr. Kim, you want to get a question or anything in before we do start signing off?
Well, I think this is, again, powerful because it tells us where we should be going when it comes to spirituality. We set the tone, we gave the pathway, and now we seek to obtain.
Yes, it did.
Yes, yeah. And I love to get more into it. But if y'all do listen in on the show, you notice that almost every show we try to get in a little information on Mayat, Shetwat Netta, consciousness, spirituality. We always giving little gems here and there.
Yes.
Because the goal is to raise empowerment, cultural awakening, and grassroots truth telling, as I state at the beginning in my intro every time. But as we close today, today's session on Know Thyself, the main purpose of life, we must remember that knowledge is not just for the mind, it's for transformation. The wisdom of Shetwat Netta reminds us that The divine lives within us. Semitawe calls us to unite our higher and lower self. The 9 parts of spirit reminds us that we are more than flesh and blood.
Yes.
We are divine beings walking a human journey. And when we speak of consciousness and energy, we are talking about the power that already resides inside of us, just waiting to be activated. And when we return to Maya, truth, justice, and righteousness, we return to the blueprint of African greatness. So, brothers and sisters, let us not only study Maya, but live Maya. Let us not only talk about unity, but practice unity. Let us not only seek truth, but embody truth. For in knowing ourselves, we rise, and in rising, we lift our people. This is how this has been Africans United, Know Thyself, Black Power Radio on Oak 93.5. Until next time, walk in truth and live in the eternal light of our ancestors. Many blessings and divine love. Remember, proper education always corrects error. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.